Coming up next, Book TV presents Afterwards, an hour-long program where we invite guest hosts to interview authors. This week, author and journalist Gary Rivlin discusses his new book, Broke USA, From Pawn Shops to Poverty Incorporated, How the Working Poor Became Big Business. In it, the two-time Gerald Loeb Award winner introduces his readers to what he calls mercenary entrepreneurs and the products they sell to those who can't get credit or bank accounts. He examines the world of instant tax refunds, payday loans, and predatory lending with Manhattan Institute fellow Heather MacDonald.
Welcome to Afterwards. My name is Heather MacDonald. I'm a fellow at the Manhattan Institute, and it's an honor to interview Gary Rivlin about his new book, Broke USA. Welcome to C-SPAN, Gary.
Thank you.
Gary, this is your fourth book. You've already written three before: Fire on the Prairie, Chicago's Harold Washington and the Politics of Race, Drive-By, and The Plot to Get Bill Gates. You're a winner of 2 Gerald Loeb Awards for distinguished business reporting, and you've written articles for the New York Times Magazine, GQ, Salon, and Newsweek. Now this fourth book, Broke USA, From Pawn Shops to Poverty, Inc., How the Working Poor Became Big Business, chronicles a segment of the credit industry that is all too familiar to millions of Americans, but completely unknown to everybody else. Why don't you sort of lay out the contours of that industry for us?
So you've got a range of businesses. Some of them are really old, like pawn shops, which date back centuries. And some of them are pretty new. Payday loans, for those who don't know what a payday loan is, they're basically emergency loans for the working poor. All you need is a regular check, whether a paycheck or a government check, and a checking account. You can get a quick $200, $300, $400. There's some really odd creations. There's once a year where the working poor, those making $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 a year, when they're rich. And that's tax time. Because of the earned income tax credit, people with families come into 2-3 months worth of salary at once. So there are all these instant tax mills. You could go in and get your tax refund instantly or maybe the next day, but of course you pay a hefty fee to get it more quickly than waiting the 2 or 3 weeks from the IRS. And I just grew fascinated by these businesses. First, that there are all these creative ways of trying to get rich counterintuitively off the working poor, and then also that it's such big business. I mean, the shock to me personally is that I know corner check cashers. I live here in New York City, but there's 6 publicly traded companies in the check cashing business, 7 if you include Walmart. Payday loans, it's a rinky-dink business, really, $200, $300, $400 loans, but there's 6 publicly traded companies in that business.
Well, what's the difference between subprime lending and predatory? How do you tell when something becomes predatory, which is obviously a value judgment?
Well, no, exactly. Yeah, I don't necessarily use the term predatory for a check casher, for instance. Yes, they charge a big fee for cashing a check. Here in New York, you'd pay about 2% of the face value of a check. If you lived in Georgia or Arkansas, you pay about 5%. Which is a steep tax. I mean, a $20,000 salary, you're paying $1,000 just almost like a poverty tax to cash your check. But I don't call that predatory. I call that a necessary evil. There's 17 million or so people in this country who have no bank account, some because they don't trust banks, some because they've messed up their relationship with a bank. Somehow, some way, they've got to cash their checks. Somehow, some way, they need to pay their bills, their utility bills and such.
Well, let's talk about the payday loan, because that's people that do have a checking account. They're not the unbanked. Right. So describe how a payday loan works.
So emergency bankers to the working poor. Your car breaks down. Your refrigerator breaks. You have a couple of unanticipated bills. You need an extra $200, $400, $500 until your next payday. Go into the corner payday lender. Easy to find. They're only legal. They only operate in 2/3 of the states, but there are more payday lenders in the U.S. than there are McDonald's and Burger Kings combined. And they advertise themselves as quick and easy, and they're very quick and easy. you get your cash so you can fix your car, so you can continue going to work, you can pay your bills. The rub, what makes it controversial, is the fee they charge. Typically, they'll charge $15 for every $100 borrowed. Some states, they're allowed to charge more, and they do charge more. And that could really add up very, very quickly. If you express it as an interest rate, it could be 400% annual interest rate, if not more. The payday lenders hate when you use the APR. Describes it's a 2-week loan, it's a $15 per 100 fee. Why using an APR? You wouldn't say salmon costs $14,000 a ton, you'd say it costs $7 a pound.
Well, the logic of the payday loan, as I understand from your book, is it makes sense when it crosses the point of a overdraft fee for a bounced check. Now, you describe overdraft fees as another way of sort of parasitically what you say, feasting off of the poor. So is there no justification for banks' overdraft fees? If they didn't have them, wouldn't everybody be bouncing checks right and left? And I've bounced checks through sheer inadvertence. Isn't there some value to having that discipline of needing to keep funds in your account in order to cover checks that you write?
Yeah, but how much do you charge? I mean, banks since 2008, they obviously have some problems. What they've been doing is increasing the bounce check fees. There's one study that there was $25 billion in bounce check fees. Yes, you bounce a check, there should be a charge, but should it be a $40 charge, a $45 charge?
I don't know how you determine, and I would think in a competitive market that maybe that would clear it. In fact, the payday loan, you acknowledge in your book that at 36% interest, which is what sort of the typical standard loan, it's very hard to make a profit for anything less than that as a standalone store. And you also quote the Center for Responsible Lending, which you think is sort of the premier consumer advocacy group, and they acknowledge that if it weren't for rollovers of people not being able to pay the check back, that it still wouldn't be profitable. So this suggests that perhaps it's charging what it takes to give these small loans to a risky clientele. And maybe the problem isn't with the businesses offering the loans, but our quick consumption culture, that we all should maybe be saving more money and cultivating thrift a little bit more. And we're blaming the messenger, perhaps.
With that last point, that the answer here isn't to outlaw payday lenders. The answer here would be to help people have a bit of a cushion. I mean, the shame of it is that these are folks, and it makes sense, you make $20,000, $25,000 a year, it's hard to get ahead, it's hard to have a cushion. But these are folks who have no cushion whatsoever, so they have to resort to a payday lender. Theoretically, there's nothing wrong with a payday loan. I spoke to a man in North Carolina, runs a huge credit union there, Jim Blaine, that his credit union, they have teachers and state employees as their customers. They do payday loans where they're charging 12% interest. The difference is that they have, regular checking and they do auto loans and home loans. It's just one in a range. You don't have to have a store set up and employees staffing it for one and only one purpose, to give payday loans. And so I think that's part of the problem. Yes, if you are just selling payday loans, there is no way, given the cost of renting a place, the cost of employees, and the cost of default. There's no guarantee that these folks are paying back the loan. There's just their promise that 2 weeks later, the check that they gave you is going to be good. So the defaults, about 5% of the people default here. But I would say that if Ace Hardware only sold hammers, they'd have to charge a lot more for a hammer. If Burger King only sold hamburgers, they'd have to charge a whole lot more for hamburgers. Maybe the business doesn't make sense as a standalone business. Maybe the business should exist, but at a financial service center that offers a range of products, so they don't have to build in all these costs so they can make money.
Well, it does, obviously. You chronicle some people for whom it's made a lot of sense. Some of the people that are really feasting off of Poverty Inc., as you describe it, one of whom is Alan Jones, who's probably the king of payday lending. This is somebody who's building a chateau in Cleveland, Tennessee.
The chateau is built.
Is it really?
I've been in it.
I've seen
Very nice.
pictures on your website. It looks pretty good.